My cousin Bridget stood up at Grandma's funeral and pointed directly at me. She doesn't deserve to cry. She abandoned Grandma for years. The entire room nodded in agreement. But when the lawyer pulled out hospital security footage 20 minutes later, every single person in that room discovered they'd been living a lie for 3 years. I'm Joanna, and what happened at my grandmother Florence's funeral 3 days ago changed everything our family believed about love, loyalty, and the price of keeping secrets. You need to understand who we all were before that funeral destroyed everything we thought we knew about each other. My grandmother Florence raised me from age 7 to 17 while my parents built their real estate empire. She was the one who taught me to tie my shoes, helped with homework at her kitchen table, and stayed up with me when nightmares came. Every important moment of my childhood happened in her craftsman house on Maple Street, the one with the wraparound porch where she'd wait for me after school with fresh cookies and endless patience. Then there's my cousin Bridget, 2 years older than me, always perfectly dressed, perfectly spoken, the daughter who could do no wrong in my Uncle Raymond's eyes. Bridget had this way of making every gesture seem generous while somehow reminding you she was doing you a favor. When she moved in with Grandma 3 years ago after her messy divorce, the family treated her like a saint. Poor Bridget, giving up her life to care for Mother, Uncle Raymond would say at every family gathering, making sure I heard every word. Uncle Raymond, Grandma's eldest son, had always been the self-appointed family patriarch after Grandpa died. He managed everyone's opinions like he managed his hardware store chain, with spreadsheets of grievances and careful tallies of who deserved what. He'd been grooming Bridget to be the family matriarch after Grandma, the keeper of traditions and family wealth. My mother Diane had always been Raymond's shadow, agreeing with whatever her older brother decided was family law. She'd chosen her relationship with Raymond over defending me so many times I'd stopped counting. "Raymond knows best," she'd say, whenever I tried to explain my side of anything. "Don't make waves, Joanna. Family peace is more important than being right." And then there was Mr. Thornberry, Grandma's lawyer for 40 years, a man who looked like he'd stepped out of a courtroom drama with his 3-piece suits and silver pocket watch. He'd been sitting in the back row of the funeral parlor, silent and observant, a thick manila envelope resting on his lap. Nobody paid him much attention at first. We all assumed he was there to pay respects, maybe read some standard legal statement about the will later. We had no idea he was about to detonate a bomb that would destroy every lie my family had built over the past 3 years. But standing in that funeral parlor, watching Bridget accept condolences for her dedication while shooting me triumphant glances, I held my tongue. Because I knew something none of them did. I knew about the midnight hours at Willowbrook Care Center, about Grandma's moments of perfect clarity when she'd grip my hand and whisper, "They'll see the truth soon enough, sweet girl, just wait." The funeral director had just announced it was time for family remembrances when everything started to unravel. I stood up to share a memory about Grandma teaching me her famous apple pie recipe, the one she'd never written down, only passed from hand to heart. That's when Bridget decided to destroy me in front of everyone we'd ever known. She stood up slowly, deliberately, her black dress pristine, her makeup perfect even in grief, and pointed at me like she was identifying a criminal in court. "How dare you," she said, her voice carrying across the entire chapel, reaching the back rows where Grandma's church friends sat, the middle rows where our extended family whispered, and the front row where I stood frozen. "How dare you stand there with tears in your eyes when you haven't visited Grandma once in 3 years? Not once, Joanna. I was there every single day holding her hand through every difficult moment, every lonely night when she called out for family. And where were you? Too busy with your perfect little teaching job to care about the woman who raised you?" The chapel erupted in whispers. Heads nodded. People who'd known me since childhood looked at me with disgust. My 3rd-grade teacher, Mrs. Henderson, actually shook her head in disappointment. My mother stared at the floor, her silence louder than any accusation. Uncle Raymond stood up beside his daughter, his hand on her shoulder in solidarity, his eyes boring into me with pure contempt. But Mr. Thornberry was already walking toward the podium, that manila envelope now open in his hands, and I saw something in his expression that made my heart race. He knew. Somehow, Grandma had made sure he knew everything. The security footage he was about to show would change everything. But in that moment, standing there with my entire family's judgment crushing down on me, I could only think about Grandma's last clear words to me, spoken just a week before she died. The truth doesn't need defending, Joanna. It just needs time. 3 days ago, I buried my grandmother, Florence, the woman who raised me when my own parents were too busy building their real estate empire. Standing in that funeral parlor, I felt like an outsider in my own family. For the past 3 years, everyone believed I'd abandoned Grandma when she needed me most. They couldn't have been more wrong. My childhood existed in the spaces my parents left empty. While they negotiated deals and flew to investment properties, Grandma Florence filled every gap with unconditional love. She turned their absence into adventures. We'd bake 6 different kinds of cookies on Saturdays, each with its own story from her childhood. She taught me to read using her collection of mystery novels, doing voices for every character until I laughed so hard milk came out my nose. When I had my first heartbreak at 15, she didn't offer platitudes. She taught me to refinish furniture instead, saying sometimes you need to sand things down to their bones before you can make them beautiful again. The truth about my visits started 3 years ago when Bridget moved into Grandma's house. She'd just divorced Trevor, her investment banker husband, who'd apparently been investing more than money in his 23-year-old assistant. Bridget arrived at Grandma's doorstep with designer luggage and a sob story that could have won an Oscar. "I just need somewhere to heal," she told the family at Sunday dinner, dabbing her eyes with a handkerchief that probably cost more than my weekly groceries. "And Grandma needs someone here. It's perfect timing." Uncle Raymond immediately declared Bridget a hero. "Family takes care of family," he announced, looking pointedly at me. "Some of us understand that better than others." The comment stung because I'd offered to move in with Grandma 6 months earlier when she'd had her first fall. Raymond had dismissed the idea, saying I was too young, too inexperienced, that Grandma needed proper care, not a babysitter. 2 months after Bridget moved in, everything changed. Grandma called me at midnight, something she'd never done before. Her voice shook as she whispered into the phone, afraid Bridget would hear from the next room. "Joanna, my jewelry is disappearing. My mother's emerald ring, your grandfather's watch, the pearl necklace he gave me for our 40th anniversary, they're all gone. Bridget says I'm imagining things, that the dementia is making me paranoid, but I know what I know." I drove to the house immediately. Bridget met me at the door in silk pajamas, her face a mask of concern that didn't reach her eyes. "Oh, Joanna, thank goodness you're here. Grandma's having another episode. She's been accusing me of the most horrible things." She led me to the living room where Grandma sat, looking small and frightened in her favorite chair. When she saw me, relief flooded her face. "Tell her, Joanna," Grandma pleaded. "Tell her I'm not crazy. The jewelry was in my bedroom safe. The combination is your birthday. Check for me, please." Bridget's hand tightened on my arm. "The safe's been empty for months. The dementia makes her forget things. Dr. Morrison says it's common for patients to create false memories about valuable items." But I saw something flicker in Bridget's expression when Grandma mentioned the combination. She hadn't known it was my birthday. I insisted on checking the safe myself. It was empty, but the dust pattern inside showed recent disturbance, shapes where rings and necklaces had rested undisturbed for years. When I confronted Bridget privately, she turned vicious. "You're just jealous that I'm here and you're not. You want her money, her house. Everyone knows teachers don't make anything. Must be hard watching me take care of her while you can barely pay your rent." Within hours, Bridget had called Uncle Raymond, spinning a story about me showing up in the middle of the night, upsetting Grandma with accusations, trying to turn her against Bridget. By morning, my mother had called me 3 times. "How could you, Joanna? Bridget's sacrificing everything to care for Mother, and you're causing drama because you feel guilty about not being there yourself." The family meeting that followed was brutal. Raymond presented it like a business case, complete with Bridget's receipts for groceries and medications, her calendar of doctor's appointments, photos of her reading to Grandma. "And what have you contributed, Joanna?" he asked, his voice dripping with disdain. "Besides midnight accusations and upheaval?" I made a decision that night. If the family wanted to believe Bridget's performance, I'd let them. But I wouldn't abandon Grandma. That's when I started visiting Willowbrook Care Center between 11 p.m. and 2 a.m., when the night staff would let me sit with her during her restless hours. For 3 years, I lived a double life, teaching third grade by day, holding Grandma's hand through her sundown fears by night. She knew I was there. During her clear moments, she'd squeeze my hand and whisper, "You came." That was enough. The funeral was supposed to be my chance to say goodbye peacefully, but Bridget couldn't resist her moment of triumph. The chapel was packed with everyone who'd ever known Grandma Florence, her church friends, former co-workers from the library where she'd worked for 30 years, neighbors who remembered her legendary 4th of July barbecues. I'd chosen a seat in the third row, close enough to honor her, but far enough to avoid family drama. That plan lasted exactly 47 minutes. Father McKenna had just finished the opening prayers when the family remembrances began. Cousin Walter talked about Grandma's garden, how she grew tomatoes the size of softballs. Aunt Ruth shared the story of Grandma teaching her to drive in the Woolworths parking lot, both of them laughing so hard they couldn't see straight. Then I stood up, holding the recipe card for Grandma's apple pie, the one she'd finally written down for me just last month during a clear moment. Grandma Florence taught me that love isn't just words, I began, my voice steady, despite the tears threatening to fall. She showed me love was in the details, the way she'd cut the crusts off my sandwiches in diagonal lines because triangles tasted better, the way she— Stop. Bridget's voice cut through the chapel like a blade. She stood up from the front row, her black designer dress immaculate, her face a perfect mask of righteous indignation. "Just stop, Joanna. How dare you stand there crying, pretending you cared about Grandma?" The entire congregation turned to stare. I saw Mrs. Patterson from the grocery store lean forward, hungry for drama. The church ladies who'd known me since birth whispered behind their funeral programs. My mother, Diane, sat frozen, her hands clenched in her lap. Bridget walked toward me, each step deliberate, theatrical. "You haven't visited Grandma once in 3 years, not once. Where were you when she broke her hip? When she had pneumonia last winter? When she cried at night asking for you?" Her voice rose with practiced emotion. "I was there every single day. I held her hand through every doctor's appointment, every treatment, every lonely night when dementia stole her memories." Uncle Raymond stood up, backing his daughter like they'd rehearsed this moment. "Bridget's right. We all saw who really loved Mother. Bridget sacrificed her career, her social life, everything to care for her. And you, Joanna, too busy with your perfect little classroom, your Teacher of the Year awards, you couldn't even manage a phone call." The congregation's judgment pressed down on me like a physical weight. I heard someone whisper, "Shameful." Another voice said, "Poor Florence, forgotten by her own granddaughter." My third-grade teaching partner, Linda, looked at me with such disappointment I felt my knees weaken. My mother finally spoke, her voice barely audible but cutting deeper than any shout. "Maybe you should sit down, Joanna. This day is hard enough without your dramatics." Bridget wasn't finished. She pulled out her phone, scrolling through photos. "Look," she said, holding it up for everyone to see. "Here's me brushing Grandma's hair every morning. Here's me feeding her when her hands shook too much to hold a spoon. Here's me sleeping in the chair beside her hospital bed." Each photo was perfectly staged, Bridget always positioned where the light caught her best angle, always with that same sacrificial expression. "And what do you have to show, Joanna?" Bridget asked, her voice dripping with false sympathy. "Where are your photos? Your memories from these past 3 years? Oh wait, you can't share what doesn't exist." I wanted to scream the truth. I wanted to pull out my own phone, show them the hundreds of photos from my night visits, Grandma and me playing cards at midnight, reading her favorite mysteries when she couldn't sleep, the two of us sharing hot chocolate at 1 a.m. while she told me stories about Grandpa I'd never heard before. The visitor logs that would prove I'd been there 5 nights a week, every week, for 3 years straight. But I stayed silent. Because 2 months ago, during one of Grandma's last clear moments, she'd gripped my hand with surprising strength. "Let them think what they want, sweet girl. You and I know the truth, and that's what matters. Promise me you won't tell them until the time is right. Promise me you'll let Mr. Thornberry handle everything." So I stood there in that chapel, drowning in my family's contempt, clutching Grandma's recipe card like a lifeline. Bridget returned to her seat, satisfaction radiating from every pore. The funeral director suggested we continue with the service, his voice uncomfortable with the family drama playing out in sacred space. But I noticed Mr. Thornberry in the back row, and he was pulling papers from his briefcase, his expression grim but determined. He caught my eye and nodded slightly, and I knew. The time Grandma had spoken about was here. Mr. Thornberry cleared his throat, the sound cutting through the chapel's thick tension like a judge's gavel. He stood up from the back row, his presence commanding immediate attention despite his slight frame. Before we conclude, Florence left specific instructions for me to share something with all of you today. Bridget laughed, the sound sharp and dismissive. What could Grandma possibly have to show? She had dementia, Mr. Thornberry. She didn't even recognize us most days. I'm the one who had to explain who everyone was when you visited about the will. She turned to the congregation with a martyred expression. It was heartbreaking, watching her mind slip away. Some days she thought I was her sister Margaret, who died 20 years ago. Actually, Mr. Thornberry continued, walking toward the front with measured steps, Florence was quite lucid when she arranged this 3 months ago. She called me herself, insisted on a private meeting at Willowbrook during what she called her clear window, between 11 p.m. and 2 a.m. He pulled out a tablet from his briefcase, handling it like evidence in a court case. Uncle Raymond stepped forward, his face flushing red. This is inappropriate. My mother wasn't in her right mind. Whatever confused request she made shouldn't disrupt her funeral. We're here to mourn, not to indulge the fantasies of a sick woman. I have documentation from 3 separate doctors, Mr. Thornberry replied, pulling out a folder and holding it up. Dr. Morrison, Dr. Patel, and Dr. Williams all confirmed her mental capacity during specific windows. They noted that while Florence experienced sundown syndrome during evening hours, she often had remarkable clarity late at night. These assessments were conducted over multiple sessions, properly witnessed and notarized. The congregation stirred uncomfortably. Mrs. Henderson, who'd taught Sunday school for 40 years, clutched her pearls. Father McKenna looked torn between maintaining funeral decorum and allowing what seemed to be Grandma's final wishes. Furthermore, Mr. Thornberry continued, connecting the tablet to the funeral home's display system, Florence spent considerable effort and resources gathering this information. She hired a private investigator, installed legal security measures, and meticulously documented everything. She wanted you all to see this. The screen flickered to life, showing security footage from Willowbrook Care Center. The timestamp read 3 weeks ago, 11:47 p.m. There was Grandma in her room, sitting up in bed, alert and animated, and there beside her, holding her hand, was me. "That's impossible," Bridget whispered, her perfectly composed facade cracking. "The staff said no one visited at night. I specifically asked the day nurses. They kept logs." "The day staff," Mr. Thornberry corrected. "You specifically asked the day shift nurses about visitors. You never inquired about night visitors. The night staff had different logs, which Florence made sure were preserved." He clicked to another video, dated 6 months ago. "This is just one example. I have 3 years' worth of footage." My mother gasped as she watched me on screen, braiding Grandma's hair at midnight while Grandma laughed at something I'd said. The timestamp showed it was a Tuesday, a school night when everyone assumed I was home sleeping, preparing for my early morning classes. "But why?" Aunt Ruth asked, her voice bewildered. "Why would Joanna visit in secret? Why not tell us?" Mr. Thornberry looked at me, asking silent permission. I nodded, my throat too tight to speak. "Because Florence asked her to," he said simply. "After Joanna was accused of making false allegations about missing jewelry, after the family chose to believe those accusations without investigation, Florence knew her granddaughter would never be welcomed during regular visiting hours, so they created their own schedule. 5 nights a week, sometimes more, Joanna would arrive after 11 p.m. and stay until Grandma fell asleep, usually around 2 a.m. The screen now showed a compilation of visits, me reading to Grandma, sharing late-night snacks, helping her with gentle exercises the physical therapist had recommended, writing letters to old friends as Grandma dictated. In every frame, Grandma looked happy, engaged, loved. The night nursing staff wrote letters of support, Mr. Thornberry added, pulling out more documents. Nurse Patricia Williams wrote, Joanna never missed a scheduled visit in 3 years. She knew every medication, every treatment, every preference. When Florence had her stroke last spring, Joanna was there within minutes, holding her hand while we waited for the ambulance. She rode with her to the hospital and stayed for 14 hours straight, then went directly to teach her 3rd grade class without complaint. Uncle Raymond sank into the pew, his face pale. But Bridget said she was always alone during the hard parts. There's more, Mr. Thornberry said, his voice gaining an edge. Much more. But first, I need everyone to understand something. Florence orchestrated this revelation not out of spite, but because she believed truth and justice were more important than comfortable lies. She documented everything because she knew her family would need proof. She protected Joanna's secret because she wanted to see who would show their true character when they thought no one was watching. But that's not why Florence wanted you to see this, Mr. Thornberry continued, his fingers moving across the tablet with deliberate precision. This is from 18 months ago, recorded at 3:17 a.m. The screen filled with new footage from Grandma's room at Willowbrook. The image was crystal clear, showing Bridget entering through the doorway, looking over her shoulder before closing the door behind her. She moved directly to Grandma's dresser, pulling out the jewelry box that Grandma kept for the few pieces she still wore. Bridget's hands moved quickly, professionally, selecting specific items. The camera caught her holding up Grandma's emerald ring to the light, examining it like an appraiser before slipping it into her purse. "That's doctored!" Bridget screamed, jumping to her feet. "That's not real. Someone fabricated this footage." Her perfect composure shattered completely, mascara beginning to run as real tears finally appeared. "Grandma was confused. She gave me those pieces. She wanted me to have them." Mr. Thornberry pulled out a thick stack of receipts. "These are from Garrison's Pawn Shop on Riverside Drive, Valley Gold Exchange on 3rd Street, and Premium Estate Jewelry on Mason Avenue. Every transaction has your signature, Bridget. You sold 43 pieces of Florence's jewelry over 3 years, including her wedding ring, the pearl necklace from her 40th anniversary, and the diamond brooch that belonged to Florence's mother." The congregation gasped collectively. Mrs. Patterson actually stood up to get a better view of the documents. Father McKenna had stopped trying to maintain order, his own shock evident on his weathered face. "The private investigator Florence hired was quite thorough," Mr. Thornberry continued. "He found that you sold the emerald ring 14 months ago for $8,000. The same ring you're wearing right now, which you purchased back from the pawn shop last week for $12,000 when you learned Florence had passed." Everyone's eyes went to Bridget's hand, where the distinctive Art Deco emerald ring caught the light from the stained glass windows. She instinctively covered it with her other hand, but it was too late. Uncle Raymond stared at his daughter in horror. "Bridget, tell me this isn't true. Tell me you didn't steal from your grandmother while she was sick." "She didn't know!" Bridget's voice cracked, desperate. "She had dementia. Those things were just sitting there, gathering dust. I had debt from the divorce. Trevor left me with nothing." "Trevor left you with a $2 million settlement," Mr. Thornberry stated flatly. "We have those records too. You lost it all through online gambling. The investigator found your accounts on 17 different gambling sites. You burned through your divorce settlement in 18 months, then started stealing from Florence." Mr. Thornberry clicked to another document on the screen. "This is a police report Florence filed 6 months ago. She never pursued it because she wanted to give you a chance to come clean. She waited, Bridget. She gave you every opportunity to confess, to make amends. You never did." My mother had started crying, real tears of shame and recognition. "Oh God, Joanna tried to tell us. She tried to warn us about the missing jewelry, and we called her jealous. We called her greedy." "There's one more thing," Mr. Thornberry said, pulling out a sealed envelope. "Florence's will was updated 3 months ago during one of her documented lucid periods. She left her entire estate, the house on Maple Street, her investment portfolio, and all remaining assets valued at approximately $2.3 million, to the one person who never stopped caring for her, even when falsely accused." He looked directly at me, and I felt 3 years of hidden pain beginning to lift. "Joanna, your grandmother wanted you to know she saw everything. She knew everything. She wrote you this letter." With shaking hands, I took the envelope as Mr. Thornberry read from his copy aloud. "My dearest Joanna, I may have had dementia, but I wasn't blind. You came every night not for praise or recognition, but out of love. You let your family hate you rather than expose Bridget's theft because you knew it would destroy us. That's real love. Sacrificing your reputation for others' peace. You protected me while letting them think you abandoned me. You are the granddaughter I raised, the woman I'm most proud of. The truth always finds its way to light, sweet girl. Thank you for keeping my secrets until I could reveal theirs." Bridget lunged toward me, her hands reaching for my throat. "You manipulated her. You turned her against me. You planned this whole thing." Uncle Raymond caught his daughter, holding her back as she struggled. "Stop it, Bridget! Just stop!" His voice broke completely. "What have you done? What have you become?" The police entered the chapel then. Mr. Thornberry had apparently called them before the service began. As they read Bridget her rights, she kept screaming that it was my fault, that I'd poisoned Grandma against her, that families were supposed to protect each other. The irony of that last statement wasn't lost on anyone. The funeral ended in chaos. Bridget was arrested 2 days later when the investigation revealed she'd stolen over $200,000 worth of items from Grandma over 3 years. The detective told me they found detailed records on her computer, spreadsheets where she'd tracked which items to take, when to sell them, how to space out the thefts to avoid suspicion. She'd been systematic, calculating, treating Grandma's treasures like an ATM she could access whenever her gambling debts mounted. Uncle Raymond hasn't spoken to Bridget since her arrest. He sits in Grandma's kitchen now, the one where we all gathered for Sunday dinners, staring at old photo albums. "I failed her," he told me yesterday, his voice hollow. "I failed my mother and I failed you. I was so proud of having a daughter who seemed perfect that I couldn't see what she really was. And I was so quick to judge you that I couldn't see who you really were." My mother Diane can barely look me in the eye, not from anger, but from shame that runs so deep it's changed her posture. She came to my apartment last night with a box of apology letters she'd written but never sent. "Why didn't you tell us?" she asked, tears streaming down her face. "Would you have believed me?" I responded, setting down the tea Grandma taught me to make when conversations got difficult. "You chose Bridget's performance over trusting your own daughter. When I tried to tell you about the missing jewelry, you called me dramatic. When I said Grandma was scared, you said I was jealous." "We should have known," she whispered. "A mother should know when her child is telling the truth." The inheritance wasn't what mattered to me. It never was. What mattered was that Grandma knew I never abandoned her. During our last visit, just 3 days before she passed, she was completely lucid for 2 full hours. We talked about everything: my students, her childhood, the way coffee tastes better at midnight when you're sharing secrets. She held my hand and said, "They'll know the truth one day, sweet girl. Just keep being who you are. Love isn't about the show you put on. It's about showing up when nobody's clapping." Last night, I found another note from Grandma. Tucked inside the cookbook she left me between her recipes for Christmas cookies and Sunday roast. "Joanna, you learned the most important lesson I could teach. Sometimes love means letting others be wrong about you. The truth always surfaces, but character is what you do when no one's watching. Those midnight visits weren't just about me, they were about who you are. Never change." I still visit Willowbrook every night. Not for Grandma anymore, but for Mr. Nelson in room 248, who has no family, and Mrs. Chen in room 251, whose children live overseas. I read to them, just like I read to Grandma, because she taught me that real love isn't performed for an audience. It happens in the quiet moments when no one's keeping score. Bridget's preliminary hearing is next month. The family wants me to forgive and forget, to drop the charges. "Family doesn't do this to family," Aunt Ruth pleaded at coffee yesterday, but Mr. Thornberry delivered Grandma's final message on that matter. "Florence said to tell you, Joanna, that family doesn't steal from family either. Stand your ground. Forgiveness without accountability isn't love. It's enabling." I'm using part of the inheritance to establish the Florence Memorial Fund at Willowbrook. It ensures that residents without families get visitors, especially during those long, lonely nights when the darkness feels heavier and memories feel distant. The fund pays for people to sit with them, read to them, hold their hands through the difficult hours, because everyone deserves to have someone who shows up, even when no one's watching. The emerald ring sits in my jewelry box now, but I don't wear it. Not yet. Maybe one day when the anger fades and the hurt scabs over. For now, I wear Grandma's simple silver wedding band. The one piece Bridget didn't take because it had no monetary value. It's worth everything to me. The truth about family is that sometimes the people who share your blood are strangers, and sometimes love means letting them misunderstand you until the truth is ready to stand on its own. Grandma knew that. She orchestrated her final act not for revenge, but for justice, not for drama, but for truth. She protected me by letting me protect her dignity. And in the end, she made sure everyone knew that real love happens at 11 p.m. on a Tuesday when you're exhausted from teaching all day but you show up anyway because someone needs you. That's Grandma's real inheritance, not the money or the house, but the knowledge that integrity is what you do when nobody's watching, and love is what you give when nobody's counting. If this story touched your heart, please like this video and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Leave a comment below about a time when the truth finally came to light in your own life. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more stories about families, secrets, and the unexpected ways justice finds its way home.